Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the Worldwide Coalition Network here at the Go Local Live Broadcast Center. We're deep in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island, and it's PVD Fest here, a citywide festival of the arts, which includes food, street musicians, performances. Providence, Rhode Island is a Renaissance city, and someday, as I speak to libertarians across the country, we hope to have our national convention here. We tried for 2020, but some little city named Austin got it. So we'll see you in 2022. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and of course the mothership at coalitionradio.us. In the coming days, if candidates, particularly libertarian candidates, hear this show and they'd like to appear, reach out to me at p4ward@coalitionradio.us, or simply reach out to me on the Facebook, as they say. We've got a few ground rules here on the coalition that we normally observe when it comes to candidates. We don't handicap elections here. We're not interested in your fundraising. We're not interested in your polling. We're simply interested in issues. We're not interested if you're going to win. We want to simply know why you should. And it is with that spirit that we've embraced candidates from all over the country, many libertarian, but independent, progressive, democratic. This is the coalition, after all, where we seek to establish, well, if you will, that circle. We look often for similarities in places where we can work together in opposition to what many of us in the libertarian movement call the duopoly, but ultimately to work towards eliminating corporate welfare, corporate cronyism, to creating a free market which will ultimately rise all the boats, if they say in the cliche, not the type of crony capitalism that exists so much today, which is really, unfortunately, casts a sad light on what many understand perversely as the free market system. In this 8 o'clock to 9 hour clock weekly time frame, we bring people on from the movement all across the country. So if you want to join that, just again, reach out to me at pford@coalitionradio.us. Doesn't matter whether you're running for water board, town council, or in this case tonight, it is my great honor to re-welcome back to the coalition someone who has been officially deemed as a repeat offender, John Phillips. He's running as the candidate for the nomination for the Libertarian Party for the Vice Presidency of the United States. Listen, Mr. Phillips, welcome back to the coalition.
Thanks for having me, Pat.
All right, so this has been quite a few weeks now for the Rough Phillips campaign. And if you saw our little blurbs around social media, we pointed out that, incredibly enough, despite that feel like we just all got together a few short weeks ago in New Orleans, there is less than 1 year now to our confab, our convention, our meeting of the minds in Austin, Texas. And in this case, not just to work on the holiest of holies, the platform, but to choose a candidate to bring the libertarian banner forward for the presidency and the vice presidency. It's been no secret, as a radical libertarian myself now, who identifies as a radical, and a member of the Radical Caucus, proudly, that I believe that the way forward, if I can co-opt that term from the forces of the left, the way forward for the libertarian movement is to nominate candidates who can clearly articulate the libertarian philosophy, make it accessible so that folks in every way and walk of life can understand how the libertarian philosophy can improve the quality of their lives almost overnight. As I like to say, break glass, add water. And at the same time, inform people, I believe, as to, I'll call it the spiritual nature of the libertarian movement. You know, SJW, social justice worker, is usually a sarcastic term applied across to people on the internet. I'm not claiming we're that. We're not that at all. But what I am claiming is a high level of morality and spirituality in our movement. And what I mean by that is that, as we like to say, we respect the rights of the ultimate minority, and that is the individual. We are the party of pro-choice on everything, because we believe in the, if you will, the importance of self-ownership, the importance of self-determination, and honoring at every stage necessary, would it be the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the notion that, yes, we have a Constitution, but a Constitution, for many of us, is a beautifully written expression of our natural-born rights. I feel, quite frankly, like I found those candidates in the Rough Fellows campaign. The campaign now has been alive and well now for many, many months. And the purpose of tonight is to talk about two things: where the campaign's at, some of the issues you're finding, and of course, this week's appearance by Kim Ruff, the presidential banner holder, if you will, on Judge Knapp's show, Judge Napolitano, Fox Business News. Let's talk about that for a couple minutes. That was a remarkable performance.
It was. She did very well. She did very well. The only complaint I had about the show was when he cut her off.
Well, that kind of goes with the turf a little bit. It's his show. I try not to do that, but I know I'm guilty of it at times too. Let's take it kind of step by step. Equally remarkable was his, and I'll use the word denunciation, of Donald Trump. Holy cow. Now, I've listened to his show before, but, a lot of us, we don't have a lot of time to just, there's too much out there to absorb. And I've admired him from afar, but he did a takedown on President Trump I don't know that I've ever seen before, particularly from a media outlet that's largely considered the House Pravda of the Republican Party. Let's talk about that for a second. I mean, and we're here to promote your candidacy and Kim's candidacy, but the points he made when you, if you will, when you draw a parallel with the Libertarian movement were stunning. And they weren't the usual snowflakey kind of, he's not nice to people and he's mean and he's sarcastic and he's bitter. He talked about something as important as his clear attempts by using tariffs as a tax to preempt the authority of the Congress of the United States as the organization tasked with taxing.
Not only tax with taxes, but he also pointed out how that interferes with free trade, which is, of course, a long-term goal of the Libertarian Party.
Right. He talked about and his words were foreign adventures. That's a loaded term. That not just speaks not to any type of isolationism. Quite frankly, it speaks to the opposite. Libertarians are often used, the I word is often used in conjunction with us. But in reality, what Judge Knapp, as they call him, did was point out just how
and then Kim doubled down on it and just pointed out correctly foreign wars of aggression.
Exactly. And with the unsaid statement that, again, exceeding his constitutional authority by continuing to ignore, as so many presidents before him have done, but doubling down on ignoring the War Powers Act.
Well, and then let's talk about what he's done today, or at least what got announced today. So doing all that, the tariffs, all the wars, all that, and we can't let this Chinese company sell goods here because they're stealing our secrets. Then he turns around and goes to Saudi Arabia, who arguably paid for 9/11, and is allowing them to manufacture our bombs in their country.
Yeah.
And we're going to tariff these countries and keep our jobs here and keep our secrets here. But then we're going to turn around and hand away our jobs and hand away our secrets.
The hypocrisy by someone who simultaneously drapes himself in the Constitution and the American flag is stunning at a level that I don't think we've seen before. And when you talk about some of the past regimes, I guess some people call them administrations, that's saying something. If in fact the most impressive aspect of the Trump administration is to meet and exceed all previously held records for imperial presidencies, when you're beating Nixon at the guy who invented the term imperial presidency, that's saying something. I guess you should be proud. I don't know.
Honestly, I would say that we haven't seen this since we were looking at other countries and fighting the Cold War and seeing leaders in Soviet Russia and China act like this.
Right. So we have become, in many ways, that which we purport to loathe the most.
We just had the anniversary of Tiananmen Square, and we all talk about how the Chinese media suppressed all the information and all that. And then we've got Trump talking about suppressing media. And
Right. We had the trial balloon floated just over the last 24 hours, the notion that there should be some sort of, are you ready for this? State-owned media. Holy cow.
they actually floated that a couple months ago. It just came back up.
Yeah. So let's get on to a positive aspect.
Right.
Anyone who's had the opportunity to meet you and Kim have, again, been very impressed by your ability to make accessible a fairly, by today's standards, complex philosophy. I feel like, though, as a result of the Judge Knapp interview, it's really moved to a new level. I think it was sort of the coming out party for the Rough Phillips campaign, because ultimately, on a national stage, Kim managed to, in the space of about 15 or 20 minutes, and I always preface this, but I love Gary Johnson, but in a matter of 15 or 20 minutes, did more to bring to a national stage the libertarian philosophy than I've seen in my 10 years or so involvement with the party.
I would agree with that, and not just that, but I don't think we have seen this kind of national coverage this early in a campaign before.
Right.
For our party.
Right. And the demeanor of Judge Napolitano, and this is equally important, was that he was dealing with a peer. He was dealing with someone who had established her credentials. And the conversation began really as a back and forth of equals, of a clear recognition that this, and he made the allusion to her name recognition, and he made the allusion to the financing, but a clear recognition and almost acceptance, if you will, that the Rupp Phillips team has the libertarian credentials to move the party in a direction, again, that I haven't seen in the 10 years or so it's been associated with it. He did not come out so much and diminish the efforts of Gary Johnson, but he seemed to subtly put that in its place with a proper historical perspective. That was an attempt to homogenize a party to a point where it made somewhat acceptable the potential to broach the type of issues that Kim managed to broach in about 20 minutes.
And if that, by the time, if you just count the question and answer time, it was like 10.
Right.
She did very well. I was very happy with her performance. I was very happy to have him be impressed enough that he invited her to be a friend of the show at the end.
And isn't that what we've been waiting for?
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I get visibly excited about this is just not for myself, who's a Johnny-come-lately, but for people like yourself and people who I've met, like Mr. Robinson, Frank Robinson, people like him who have been with the party since the beginning, who have worked a lifetime to get to a point where issues like foreign policy, our outlook on liberty, our outlook on personal freedoms are not treated like some type of freak show, but an acknowledgement of the gifts that we were granted simply by our birth. And that, to me, is a stunning moment in our party history and why this bodes so well for the future of this campaign. Getting past the people that matter, the people that actually can comment intelligently and understand this, is the critical first step towards, I'm not looking for acceptance from the general media, but what I'm looking for is an acknowledgement and respect for the place that this party platform has in the future of this country. And that's what I think was accomplished.
I mean, I think it was definitely a step in that direction. Mm-hmm. It's a big deal to be on his show and to receive the recognition from a national media figure that we are a serious party, right, and that we are deserving of attention.
Right. And the notion that it would happen this early dovetails just as nicely with some of the other things that I want to talk about tonight, which is the organization of the machine itself that's so necessary to win and to advance ideas. My opinion, we're already months ahead of where we were in October of 2016. Just exponentially further. And that's a testament to your campaign manager and your publicity people and that inner circle that's really spreading now the organization, bringing it to scale. So let's talk about some of the issues then and so that we can elaborate on them and amplify them that he brought up. So in terms of getting past then, he talked a little bit about the nature of the campaign, financing, things like that. But then he addressed several issues. What do you think were the most compelling parts of what she talked about?
Well, let me start with the one that he cut her off on, which is, of course, ballot access. He asked if we were going to be on 50 states, and she started to explain the ballot access difficulties. Mm-hmm. And he just said, "Oh, no, you're not going to be." Well, that's probably not true. I'm involved with the ballot access committee on the LNC, and I'm involved with a lot of things involving ballot access. And at this point, we are well ahead of where we were in 2016 regarding ballot access. First of all, obviously, we had more states at the end of the election in 2016 with automatic ballot access. Uh-huh. But our organization for petitioning and those kind of things is light years ahead of where it was in 2016. The game plan is already in the works.
Yeah, and as someone, I personally was very involved in that. Rhode Island is the last state in the nation to actually even permit the beginning of the collection. And one of the more interesting days of my life was driving around. God bless Chris Thrasher, a dear friend and someone who, despite the best efforts of, some would say, the Johnson Weld campaign, managed to complete the 50-state ordeal. And I know that intimately because we were the 50th state. And we were, the day of the deadline, he and I driving around the beautiful countryside of Rhode Island, appreciating it not one bit, but seriously looking at the deadline for the Secretary of State's office in downtown La Crosse, just a few blocks from where I sit right now. So I'm glad I think she did a pretty good job of presenting that, though. Mm. But he also served, and she served, to effectively mainstream some of our positions. So, by the way, the campaign website is fully operational now.
Correct.
What is it? It's roughphillips2020.com?
Yes, sir.
roughphillips2020.com. There's position statements up there. They're thoughtful. Again, they're accessible. At the same time, they're unapologetic. And that, of course, if I was to use one word to apply to this campaign in terms of the actual context with when it's operating, is unapologetically libertarian.
Correct. That is our goal from the get-go, is that we are not apologizing for who we are. We are just being upfront with it.
Right. In a way that I don't think the duopoly could ever even imagine. And I believe that's got the opportunity to rock people's world. So what issues did she lead with during the interview? And maybe you could flesh them out a little bit. What do you think are the primary issues now that you folks are going to tackle, or we're going to tackle as part of the campaign?
Okay. Well, obviously, she started with the wars of foreign aggression, and I agree with that terminology, and I agree with that priority. It has negatively impacted so many aspects of life in our country, from separating families to killing people, to spending tax money, to hurting the economy at home, despite the fact that they try and hide the fact of how it hurts the economy at home. That absolutely has to be the number one priority.
Yeah, I mean, we look around us, and I'm old enough to remember George W. Bush talking about in the run-up to his first term in the campaign, to not being an imperialist, to not waging war. I mean, how quickly did that go off the track? In part because of exogenous issues. We're droning the life out of entire civilizations right now.
And let me put the cost in perspective. Everybody talks about the debt clock. So the debt clock right now sits almost $23 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, since 9/11, we've spent $6 trillion of that on just bombing. So with that bombing, we have spent a quarter of our debt on bombing people into oblivion.
Has it worked?
No.
I mean, forget about just for a moment, because we're libertarian, and to us, the spiritual aspect of this is very, very important. But step aside from all of that for a moment. What I like to say is, whether it be education, an issue that strikes at the heart of our culture here in the United States, whether it be our war posturing, our war status, an issue that strikes to the very heart of our quote-unquote American way, the American civilization. When I look at how we tax people, has any of this worked at any level on any sort of practical basis?
No. No, matter of fact, that's one of my favorite things when I'm talking to people is when they start talking about, well, should the government do this? When should the government do that? I look at them and say, tell me the last time the government did something well. And then I wait, and finally, usually they go, okay, I get your point.
Right. She's talking about a complete retraction, if you will, of American soldiers everywhere. As libertarians, what's your advice as someone who's campaigned literally at every level, as someone who broaches these issues regularly? What's your advice on how to couch that issue to other people? Because we believe that all the wars we're involved in. I'll use an example. If someone is on your side and they're fighting for, quote unquote, in your perspective, their nation's freedom, they're a revolutionary. They're a hero. If someone is not on your side, and perhaps maybe is a client state of the Soviet Union, for example, or Red China, then they're terrorists. Bad. When in reality, very often, that's simply a judgment that we're making. How would you suggest to people that we couch that issue during this presidential campaign coming up?
Usually I start with talking about supporting the troops. I talk to people about, because I talk to people about that because that's something that resonates with them. And then I guide the conversation into how supporting the troops means not killing any more of them, not sending them away from their families, not making more people with PTSD. And that's usually where I start.
What kind of reactions do you get from folks who are, we call them normies, people who are from the, not our world, not our planet?
At this point, it's not as bad as it used to be. When I had that conversation 10 years ago or 15 years ago, people didn't want to hear it. But since now, we have people going off to fight in Afghanistan that weren't born when we went to war in Afghanistan. Everybody knows somebody that has served now. Mm-hmm. And everybody knows somebody that's gone over there and come back with some kind of PTSD, some kind of injury, some kind of issue. And so now it resonates a lot more with them than it would have 10 or 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm. So in a real sense, much like so many other, I'll call it social issues, the key to advancing and understanding is really to bring it back in a sense to their day-to-day lives.
Correct.
I mean, I often talk about how marriage equality, the war for marriage equality was won once people started to realize it wasn't the gays, it was Billy, who I play softball with, or my cousin that I grew up going to the same summer home with, or my brother or sister. And then it wasn't the gays, it was Billy, my friend Louie, my sister Donna.
My son that isn't signing up to join the Army, and that would have been a great career move, but now I'm worried about him because now we're in war in all these different places, and I'm worried about it getting deployed.
We've weaponized the National Guard and so many guardsmen for what I believe their original mission was, to protect the homeland in terms of strife, weather, events. And yet we've turned them into an extra police force to go places that we never really signed up for.
Well, and right after 9/11, you could make an argument that we were defending ourselves after an attack.
Hmm.
But it has become readily apparent to more and more people that that was probably an excuse that they were looking for when it happened.
Hmm.
They were looking for a reason to go in, and they just happened to give us one. And now they see, okay, hey, are we really protecting our freedom in Syria? Are we really protecting our freedom by helping Saudi bomb Yemen? If we go into Iraq, are we really going to be protecting our freedom? No, of course we're not. And people are starting to see that and realize, okay, hey, this isn't what they are selling us.
We have been in a permanent state of war now. The irony being, just a few years after, and you and I are old enough to remember this, there was an active conversation at one point in this country, post-Vietnam, post-Cold War, breakup of Soviet Union, of something called a peace dividend.
Mm-hmm.
What would we do with the peace dividend? Can you imagine revisiting that conversation now?
We need to.
What,
we absolutely need to.
We took the peace dividend and essentially waged war on a significant part of the world that we were in. And
they gave a Nobel Peace Prize to the president who set the record for bombing the most countries at once.
History's an inconvenient thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And the facts are equally inconvenient. So, picture, folks, and I guess right now the video for the show it's going to be made available soon through the campaign. So if you didn't happen to catch it, the belief is you will be able to at some point in the very near future.
And you can actually, you're talking about the Judge Knapp show?
Right.
You can sign up for a free 48-hour, or no, it's now 7-day pass. You get a free trial period for 7 days, and you can watch whatever you want on there for 7 days. So if you haven't seen it, sign up for the free trial period, and then if you don't want to stay on, cancel your subscription.
And by the way, simultaneously, as a media guy or a media wannabe, nothing would be better if Fox all of a sudden saw a huge increase, or as our president would say, a huge increase in interest in libertarian programming.
Exactly.
Libertarian programming need not be Fox Business only anymore. And God bless Fox Business for giving Kennedy and our good friend from Reason Magazine a forum. So again, folks, I'm the dramatic one in this conversation, but we just broached the subject of a peaceful America on arguably the most socially conservative media platform on the planet.
The one that's the most invested in the military-industrial complex. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Think about that. Life is made of small successes, and this certainly isn't a small one, but for every person who ever hears this conversation, as libertarians who, again, I go back to the Frank Robinsons of the world, the people who have invested generations, a significant part of their adult lives, into this movement, a libertarian candidate for the presidency, a year before the election, had a conversation with an admiring host about possibly the most radioactive subject that we could talk about as libertarians. That's magic.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute magic.
And he accepted her statement.
Exactly. As a matter not only of just principle, but as a matter of absolute fact. Wow. So we talked about that. What are some other issues that she broached that you want to focus on?
That's the big one I remember. We've already talked about ballot access a little bit. There's lots of issues we want to focus on because so many of them are so intertwined. Mm-hmm. We've got the wars of aggression and the drug war. But how people don't talk. How is that intertwined? Well, we're protecting opioid poppies in Afghanistan with troops. They go hand in hand so many different ways, and then they all affect the budget. That it's hard to pick a priority, but I would say that probably those two are the top priority, just because they have such a detrimental effect on society.
Right. The amount of money that we spent and wasted on the war on drugs while watching no significant change, if not anecdotally an upswing in drug consumption, the civil liberties that we've been willing to sacrifice at the altar of drug interdiction.
And over what people forget, oh, drug addicts are everywhere, oh, they freak out. 1.3% of the population, and that number has been steady since before the war on drugs started. And all through the war on drugs, it has not changed. So they've had zero effect on drug addiction. Whereas places like Portugal, who have decriminalized, have seen drug addiction rates go down. And something like $1.3 trillion or $1.5 trillion were spent on the war on drugs. And that's a very conservative number. That's just the advertising they did, the programs they did. Doesn't include all the people that they've incarcerated, all the different costs of all the equipment that they created just to fight the war on drugs, to prevent people from a consensual activity.
And how many communities like Ferguson were created in part due to the extra legal pressures created by a law enforcement community that was obsessed with introduction of drugs into one community, as opposed to the studied ignorance of significant populations across the country.
Oh, and it was absolutely from the get-go, the war on drugs was designed for two things. And it goes back actually before they even called it a war on drugs, back to when they first started making marijuana illegal, and right after the alcohol prohibition ended. It was one, to start to make war on minorities, and two, to maintain the power that they had successfully grabbed during prohibition.
Right. Because a prohibition mentality is less to do with the actual product they're quote unquote waging war on, has everything to do with the ability of a government to tax and the ability of a government to control populations.
And control, and it's the same thing that they do to maintain our wars overseas, and keep encroaching on these. The Patriot Act, the Patriot Act, the Patriot Act. And encroaching on our liberties, our natural rights, over and over by pushing this fear, pushing this fear, pushing this fear. Yes, 9/11 was terrible. Don't get me wrong, but we've had how many successful terrorist attacks on the United States? Even it's not very many.
And you've got, for example, an entire security apparatus built up at the untold cost in this nation. And there are some who would conflate the absence of attacks with the emergence of the security apparatus. Yet at the same time, we all know that if the security apparatus had been successful in any level of interdiction, that we would have all known about the successes.
Oh yeah, well, the TSA. They when they get tested, they fail 95% of the time, or something like that. Some ridiculous amount when they run their own tests. And and we go, and Kim was just talking to me today about how she got patted down on her flight to the Oregon convention today, and how she felt violated because of where they touched her. And we're letting them do that to us over some obscure fear that they have planted in our head and sold to us repeatedly in order to make us give up our rights.
Right. Astonishing. How is the campaign at this point? And let's talk about some lunch pail issues that really strike at the heart of American family concerns right now. Mm-hmm. And first and foremost is education. I always like to make this point. It happened kind of inadvertently. I'd love to say that I'd planned this out from day one, but when I started my children's education, I wasn't a libertarian. I was sort of a recovering neocon. And whenever I speak with you, I'll always remind you that my first campaign was the Richard Nixon campaign in 2012. I'm sorry, 1972. Yikes.
2012. Wow.
Yeah, 1972. But Americans are coming to grips with the absolute failure of their primary, that is their K through 12 educational system. That, with the exception of a few communities of extraordinary wealth and a handful of communities who, perhaps through sheer perseverance and hard work, that schools are failing our students literally everywhere.
Everywhere.
And the big change is not that they haven't been failing for a while. It's just that for a variety of means, some of it's testing, others of it's a recognition from the workplace that a significant amount of our children aren't capable of working the newer, more sophisticated jobs of the new millennium. This combination effect has made it clear to everyone, regardless of what your background is, all right, that our schools are failing our children. What is the rough Phillips answer, if you will, to the failure of our educational system?
Starting with ending the Department of Education. You can actually graph a chart from when they started the Department of Education and watch the success rate of education drop year by year by year since they started it. Mm-hmm. You can also look at how, and forgive me if I'm not quoting the exact figure, but it's something like 73% of the budget of the Department of Education is spent on administration. So they take these billions of tax dollars, saying that they're helping us, but really they're just paying each other and then giving us a small portion of that money back.
Right.
And, whoa, we're supposed to be happy for that. Yay. No. Stop. Get rid of that. If it needs to happen, let it happen at the local level where those people know the needs of the people in their district. Mm-hmm. You know, this district may say, hey, we need more shop classes, because that's been a thing they've been getting away with, getting rid of. You know, so many schools don't even have shop classes of any kind anymore. But you let this school district decide, okay, hey, we need that. Let them make those decisions at the local level and support their own students with their money and in a more cost-effective manner.
Mm-hmm. When people talk about vouchers and when people talk about school choice, what is your campaign's approach to that? Or is it simply to say, deal with it at the local level and find your own solutions if in fact it doesn't mean an alternative to public schools?
Mostly it's that, because the voucher systems and all those kind of things are not handled at the federal level, other than a little bit of tax incentive kind of things. Mm-hmm. But absolutely, in my personal opinion, if you ought to be able to send your kid to whatever school you want, and if you can make that happen, make it happen. I personally send my kids to private school, and I feel like, okay, why am I paying for private school and public school when obviously I'm sending my kids to private school? I'm spending all this money because the public school couldn't cut it.
Right. We didn't do it and I did the same thing and at great personal expense.
Yeah, it's a large percentage of my personal income to pay for that.
Right. And a great additional tension and pressure. Simply eliminating, when you look at municipalities here in the Northeast, in some cases, 50, 60+% of the budget goes towards public schools. To simply take that money and let the parents spend on a more competitive, more cost-effective school system that will have to compete in the private sector, both on performance and price. It can be done. Because it's schools all across from K, not just K through 12, but up through higher education that are supported by the federal government, have all seen this growth of administration and these administrative costs, that money's not being spent teaching the students. I've seen it. The school, one of the schools I went to when I was younger, that has less students now, had one principal when I was there, but somehow needs 4 now. Yeah. And
living here in Illinois, there's all kinds of studies about how many people that are in the education system that are making more than $100,000 a year, and some of them making that in retirement.
Right. The most popular phrase to sum up libertarians in the popular culture is, of course, taxation is theft. We hear that everywhere. We say it to ourselves. It's almost like our secret handshake, except we say it out loud. If you're walking through a public area and you say, "Oh, taxation is theft," and you see someone turn around and look at you, you're amongst friends, right? But taxation is theft because because we're trying to be silly. It's because government uses the coercive powers under the back of a gun to forcibly remove and redistribute your assets. That's why we say taxation is theft, amongst many reasons.
Yeah, I always kind of had a little issue with that. I mean, it is, I guess, in a way, theft. I always figured it was a subsection of theft and that it was extortion.
Okay.
Or even a protection racket. I mean, really, that's what it is. The difference between the mob and the government is not big when it basically what they're saying is, give us our money or bad things will happen.
None of us are so bold as to believe that somehow a libertarian utopia will suddenly emerge out of the 2020 campaign.
No. In our dreams, baby, but in reality, we know that that's just not going to happen.
Right. I think somewhere we all agreed it would happen at about 3 o'clock in the morning on a Friday night in New Orleans about 8 months ago, But that was in Dan Fishman's hospitality suite. There may have been alternative factors underlying that. That's an assumption. And there was a kumbaya moment there that I was happy to see. Dan's that kind of guy, though. He can do that. By what method do you see as the first step I can't bring myself to use the word taxation and equity in the same sense. I physically can't do it. Remember when the Fonz couldn't say he was wrong? All right, right. I can't use those two words in the same sentence. All right, I know we're dating ourselves here, but what's the first step in some type of progress towards achieving some level of tax equity here in this country, if in fact it's even possible?
That's a tough question. The first thing, honestly, it's got to be controlling spending. You've got to get the spending to stop, because otherwise they're just going to keep looking for more and more and more and more and more and more and more. And they don't realize, they realize, but the common everyday person looking at their taxes taken out of their paycheck doesn't realize how much that tax causes everything they buy to cost more money. Mm-hmm. And they don't see that. And but we got to get the spending down. If we could stop with the bombing, bring all the troops home, and quit paying for all the how much of NATO and the United Nations do we fund? Kim actually talked about these extra governmental organizations that have just have not proven to be effective at any level. No, they've not. And then and now they turn around and say they pass studies, like the United Nations passed a study that we were like, I forget how far down in human rights, but they put Middle Eastern predominantly Muslim countries ahead of us that hang gay people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's come on. And we're paying for all these things. That needs to stop so that we can stop taxing and we can stop doing things like not getting Social Security funded. Social Security is an issue, and we need to wean ourselves off of it. But it is also a commitment to people that have been paying into it for a long time. So there's got to be some kind of structure there. To get the tax burden under control. That's what it's got to see. I would like to see personally. I would like to see an amendment that requires a balanced budget. I would like to see some kind of limitation on how much you can borrow, with limitations on even in emergency situations. And I would like it to all come down. If we're going to tax, it should be one tax.
Eliminate this death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah, one tax, be it income tax, be it a use tax, be it a sales tax, not property tax, but one tax that none of this hidden gas. We're gonna tax you 15 cents a gallon on gas, and then we're gonna make them include that in the price, so you don't even know you're paying that tax.
Right.
None of those things. One tax that everybody pays at the same level. If you were going to make it income tax, everybody pays, pick a number, 15%. No deductions, no nothing. Everybody pays that number, and you eliminate every other single tax ever.
Right.
And then you go from there.
Which leads me to the next subject. Is who pays for tariffs?
We do.
And what is it?
It's a tax. It is a tax on us for other people's goods.
Right. So,
As is any tax, any kind of tax that you pay on any kind of product. Everybody's like, oh, let's tax the corporations. Well, who do you think pays that tax eventually? They pass that tax down to us.
right. They have to. That's the only
They
way
have to.
we can stay in business. You and I are of an age where we remember Nadia Comaneci, I believe the Romanian gymnast who got the 10.0. She had nothing on the mental gymnastics being performed by Trumpers everywhere to somehow convince me that this is 7D chess, that we are, somehow looking at what is potentially, as somebody who works in the automobile industry, I can tell you, not even just potentially, probably a catastrophic tax on automobile manufacturers when you talk about adding a 5% tax across the board to automobile production in Mexico.
Or go back to the steel tariffs and the aluminum tariffs and how much that increased the price of not just vehicles but parts for vehicles. I watched the price of brake rotors as a mechanic. I watched the price of brake rotors go up by like 30-40%. The price of batteries has gone up because of the EPA regulations that put all the lead smelters in the United States go out of business, and so now we have to buy our lead from China. And now we're going to tariff China.
The best analogy I've heard, and let's see if I can get this straight, because it's funny and it's sad and it's apt at the same time. We're going to reward our farmers with subsidies that are money that's borrowed from China, so that we can cover the tariffs that were charged to China but paid by us.
By us. Yes. Yes.
Did I get that right?
Yeah, pretty close. Pretty close. I know Rand Paul has talked about that. So I've talked about it several times. I know Kim's brought it up. I mean, lots of people are talking about exactly that. And we're borrowing. And then we're borrowing money from China, even though we're tariffing China, but really we're tariffing us.
Right.
We're borrowing money from them, but then we're giving them money. On top of the fact that we are not collecting on the loans from way back in the day that they still owe us money on.
Boy.
Oh, and letting them get away with intellectual property theft, which some people don't believe in intellectual property, but it does hurt companies in the United States.
Right. Now there's a sunk cost in there with which they're given a limited amount of time. I had the opportunity to spend some time with with FreedomWorks a few weeks ago, and it's ironic because the subject was a bill that was simultaneously submitted by Bernie Sanders people, which is very eerily mirrors a bill being submitted by Rick Scott of Florida, which is eerily similar to a bill being floated as a trial balloon by the Trump administration that would use price fixing on prescription medicine and base the pricing on an indices of 12 different nations, including countries with a similar economy as sophisticated as ours, like Sweden and Norway.
Right.
Can't make this stuff up. One of the issues that came home in 2016 was the inability of Bill Weld, and this is not a shot, this is a political analysis here. We're not going down that road. Let's just say the inability of the ticket to keep from going home Republicans, because Republicans feared a Clinton presidency. And post a couple of gaffes by the campaign, and again, I have nothing but profound personal and deep admiration for Gary Johnson. And I mean that. That's not just a throwaway line for me.
No, well, yeah, absolutely. I agree.
I wouldn't be sitting here right now if it wasn't for him. All right? But can we accept and can we project? This is my request. This is like my musical request for the campaign. It's not appropriate for the candidates to do this, but it's appropriate for people like myself who are activists within the party. When all is said and done with the first 3 years, if you will, of the Trump administration, there are really, and this prescription medical bill was like kind of the final line in the sand. One can argue that there are really, in behavior, not rhetoric, no significant differences between Hillary Clinton and Bill Trump, maybe Donald Trump. None.
Absolutely none. I mean, they're both narcissistic. They're both, they're both grabbing the power. They're both, even though, oh no, Trump's not a war hawk because he wanted to pull us out of Syria. Yes, but now he's putting us in a war with Iraq. The similarities are far greater than, the difference is, if I was going to pick an example, it's like, okay, one's the Catholic Church and the other's the Episcopalian Church. And if you're familiar with those, it's like one's Catholic and one's Catholic light.
Right.
Yeah, they're so similar that the differences are minuscule. Hey, do you genuflect with this leg or that leg? I mean, that's really the differences. Do you want to control our thoughts on this subject or that subject? Well, it doesn't matter that the subjects are different. It's the fact that they want to control our thoughts.
Right. And we as libertarians need to put the lie to that. We have to, and this is where it gets down to a battle of facts, and where it's a responsibility of every libertarian to really fully understand the facts and really be able to present them to a nation that's, quite frankly, starved for facts.
Well, Tarnell Brown and I were having a good conversation about that the other day, because we were talking about how the Democrats all go, oh, well, but you need the government to protect us from discrimination because, you remember back in the 50s and the 40s and the, but that's not the facts. The facts are that the government actually mandated those discriminations. Mm-hmm. If you went to a restaurant that served whites only, there was probably a law that said they could there, or that they had to do that. Mm-hmm. So that was government. So the government is never about protecting the rights of the people. The government's about getting elected and pretending to make people think that they're protecting them in some way or another.
Right. And it's just a question of technique.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of Donald Trump, he has picked out a variety of bogeymen, many of whom are immigrants, a handful of selected corporations who may have had the unmitigated gall, to stand up against President Trump. In the case of the Democratic Party, quite frankly, it's this mythical concept of what capitalism really is, as opposed to what capitalism should be.
Right.
And so each constructs their own myths, each constructs their own bogeyman, each creates and uses and manipulates fear as a tool for governing, as opposed to trying to create an environment where there's opportunities and possibilities for everyone. Where a meritocracy exists and where folks are given ample ability to find out where their place in the meritocracy is. Because quite frankly, everyone has got that capabilities somehow.
I just wrote something about this just the other day, because I was talking about, people always ask me why I'm a libertarian, and I talk about history and things like that. But when I really think about it, it comes down to two things. When you study history and current events, if you look out there, when you see people succeeding, it's because they were free. They were free to do so. When you see people failing, it's because that freedom is interfered with. The other thing that, and that's my good days. My bad days is that on my bad days, I look out there and I see how horrible people are. And then I don't want those people to have power over me. And so either way, it's better to be free.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We've only got a couple minutes left, so I want to just focus on the campaign structure itself. There are now state chairmen, if you will, spread across the country.
State directors, we have state directors in 40 states, 45 states, something like that.
Right.
We just had like 6 sign on today, so I can't keep track of all that. We're growing so fast, it's hard for me to keep track of all the numbers from day to day.
Including Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell that Emily and Kim and you, to a certain degree, are perfectionists, and you're doing everything you can. So probably in your perspective, there's more to be done. There's more to be done. But again, I want to take a moment to reflect where we are and where we've been in the past, as long as I've been involved with the party. What's remarkable to anyone who listens to this now or going forward, is that there is an opportunity for people of all skills, talents, to occupy significant roles in electing a libertarian to the presidency and vice presidency. There's an opportunity for someone at significant levels for someone to advance, articulate, and shape and deliver the libertarian message to this country in a way that's never been heard before. In a way that I haven't seen. There's an egalitarianism that exists in this campaign that I did not see in prior campaigns, and I'm not here to bash them. I'm here more to reflect positively on the impact of what the culture that you folks have created in your campaign for. This is one of those deals. Show up, get involved. There's work to be done.
Jump in. We've got, if we will let you do as much work as you want to do or as little as you want to do. If you want to post one thing on Facebook a week, hey, we've got a spot for you. If you want to get out and write letters to Judge Knapp and say, hey, we'd like to have somebody on your show, we've got a position for you. We've got positions all up and down, and we've got such a great team. And when we have our directors meetings and things like that, we sign off and we're saying I love you. I mean, that's how close knit we are. I mean, we are a family.
Absolutely, it's stunning to watch to unfold. I've seen just in the last week or so a wave of endorsements from activists from around the country.
Mm-hmm.
From you,
yeah, we got some really good ones just yesterday and today. Brandon Finney and Craig Bowden. I was very excited about both of those.
Yeah, those are guys. Those guys are real troopers. I know. Brandon's been in the trenches. Craig has been in the trenches, and they're both significant because they come from very different parts of the country with very different experiences, and both just represent, I don't know, just different perspectives within the same party. But in reading their endorsements, everyone seized on the same. There's a commonality there, and the commonality wasn't because someone boilerplated some text. The commonality was words like adherence to libertarian principles. And that, we had this conversation a few months ago. That's what people are starving for in our movement.
And the ability to express those principles. Kim is amazing at that. I try and be as good as she is, but she's just amazing. And and take those and boil them down into a way that people don't have to be an Austrian economics expert to understand.
And remember, we'll close, if you will, with one of the successes of the Clinton campaign was a fundamental understanding of what people were looking for. And we are the right principle at the right time, at the right place, and it's the right people. So let's, if for whoever's listening tonight, whoever listens to this in the future, let's make miracles happen.
Absolutely.
John, again, thank you so much for joining us. I know you guys have a hectic schedule because in addition to this, you have real lives to run. So you spending an hour with me on a Friday night is priceless. Being able to project this into New England as well as some other parts of the country. God bless, and just
it's one of my few weekends off from traveling to one state or another to visit with activists. So it worked out okay.
Excellent. It's like I said in the run-up to the show. Let's keep there's a big momentum that's taking place in a broadening corner. Now it's the living room of the Libertarian Party. Let's keep that momentum alive.
Absolutely, please, and if you would like to learn more about us, www.ruffphillips2020.com. We're on Facebook. I actually answer Facebook messages and emails, so feel free to hit me up.
Absolutely. John Phillips, he is running for the Vice President of the United States for the nomination from the Libertarian Party. Representing tonight, Kim Phillips as well. I'm sorry, Kim Ruff as well. Wow, long day. Started at 4 o'clock this morning in Philly. Today was an 11-state day. A remarkable appearance on the Judge Napolitano show on Fox this week. We spoke about that, and we also spoke about some of the enduring issues and philosophies that we believe are going to contribute to their success in the 2020 campaign. If I sound wildly optimistic, it's because I am. This has been an answer to something that I've been looking for really my entire life. And when I heard it come to fruition just a few short months ago, call me a bandwagon jumper, whatever. It's when you know it's right, it's right. So folks, take a moment and check out this campaign. This could be the one.
Can I give a
all right, buddy.
Can I give a quick shout out?
Yeah, of course.
Our communications director, Erin Pyle-Metters, has been working so many hours. The weekend of the Ohio convention, I think she slept 2 hours that entire week. And she has put together such amazingly good products for us with her and her team that, and I can't name everybody on her team, but they're doing such a stellar job. I just have to take a minute to give them a shout out.
Absolutely. I'm glad you did. The hashtag of this show is hashtag take it personally. The people in your campaign are the epitome of taking it personally. And, that's something that's got to come down from the top. People don't respond this way, and unless there's a real belief. And there is no cynicism in this campaign. There's no hopelessness. There's no feeling whatsoever of having to charge up that mountain alone. The unbridled optimism and belief in what we're all engaging in right now. Again, I haven't seen in a campaign in my lifetime, and that's a tribute to all of you.
And rooting for the underdogs the American way. So
let's make history, buddy.
That's right.
All right. On that note, we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the Worldwide Coalition Network here at the Go Local Live Broadcast Center in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island, the home, hopefully, of the 2022 Libertarian National Convention. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and of course the mothership at coalitionradio.us. If you're a candidate and you're looking to spend some time in the airways, maybe getting a little practice in discussing some issues, reach out to me, P. Ford at coalitionradio.us. And for all those folks who've taken time to like or follow our pages, as always, we thank you. We thank you to our sponsors for tonight, airproducts.net, the fine folks at Yacht Club Bottling Works, and of course, 1-855-3-SHIP-IT, Beacon Shipping and Logistics, shipping automobiles around the country, around the world. We got some powerhouse libertarian presentations and some local politics next week. Folks, have a wonderful week. Enjoy PVD Fest. Get ready for Pride Weekend. We're going to be tackling that issue from a libertarian perspective next week with a significant member of the Libertarian Party, as well as a household politician here we're going to tease you on, who's occupied every level of government in this state. And he recently, I'm going to tease it. Folks, have a wonderful week. We'll see you next Friday.